2023 is the year of the boomerang. So it all starts with trauma, right? Our society suffers on purpose, and trauma is the tool used to keep people suffering. Here in the U.S., mass traumatization tactics are constantly running in the background like apps on a browser tab. And the media is the tool that's used to create and disseminate the content that leads to most of the trauma. Each generation has been subject to a specific type of mass trauma. Baby boomers lived under the threat of nuclear war. They watched all their most beloved leaders get assassinated, and they had to go to Vietnam. In addition, these baby boomers were told that they were the greatest generation ever, and they were all given superiority complexes to go with the trauma-based mind control that were dished out to them. Generation X were the generation of divorce. They were the latchkey kids. They were the kids that raised themselves because their parents were divorced and were too busy trying to earn a living independently to raise children effectively. We were the first generation to be ritualistically sexually abused, and we were the first generation to be part of the new hypersexualization plan that's being used by the dark. We're also the generation that got kidnapped, right? The Adam Walsh generation. And unlike baby boomers, Xers were given inferiority complexes to go with all the trauma-based mind control. Millennials were born into political correctness. Internet-based porn, hyper-individualism, and super-inflated egos from their helicopter parents, who treated them like, diamonds or, Area 51 secrets or something like that. As a result, though, they wound up having these hyper-inflated egos, and they actually have a lot in common with baby boomers, right? They were told from the beginning that they were the best, and that they are sort of inherently entitled, and that they're sort of better than everyone else. And so millennials and boomers sort of have that in common. So they were given superiority complexes as well. Gen Z were born into war on an industrial level. The Trade Center towers coming down, heroin, fentanyl, hypersexualization, and an unquenchable need for attention. Gen Z have also been given inferiority complexes. The point is, we've all been traumatized in a unique way simply based on which generation we were born under. Part of the reason, we're traumatized like this is to keep generations on ideological different sides of the spectrum, alternating generations on different sides of the ideological spectrum. Boomers and millennials, Gen X and Gen Z. And you can even sort of infer by the naming or the nomenclature that's used for the two superiority complex generations, they have names that actually have bravado, right? Like baby boomer or millennial, while the two inferiority complex generations have a one-word mark or letter to denote them, right? Like that illiterate person who sort of makes their mark on a piece of paper. And so the point to all this is first to conquer, right? Because whether your egoic belief is that you're better or worse than someone else, your ego is being hyperinflated either way. And a hyperinflated ego predictably leads to pain and suffering every single time, right? And then to divide. So once your ego is superinflated, you're divided from yourself and you're divided from others. So sickeningly enough, even the phrase divide and conquer is a lie, right? It's actually conquer and then divide. Conquer the individual and then keep the individual divided from others. And the reason why is to perpetuate the myth of separation. Separation from ourselves and from each other. This is what allows evil to continue living in the shadows. After 6 years of going to 3 AA meetings a day, wherein I would say no fewer than at least 10 people per meeting were given the opportunity to share. And in AA, people share their feelings and sort of what's going on inside their heads. If you've never been to an AA meeting before, that's what goes on. And one of the things that I learned is that pretty much everybody wants the same thing, right? There were the occasional outlier, and those people were generally crazy, but mostly people wanted the same thing. And the other thing I learned is that everyone complains about the same things, right? And so I guess the point I'm making is that our differences as human beings are more or less illusions, right? Just like the illusion of separation itself. We all have a lot more in common than we think. I promise you. So once we realize that we're all very similar and that we want similar things, right? And that we all sort of deal with the same pain, most of which is brought on, by that mass traumatization that's specific to our individual generations, we're able to reverse the trauma. And then once we do that, we get our sovereignty back. And then we're able to work interdependently with each other and create the world the way we want it. And I'm not just talking about like building a barn in a day. I'm talking about the end of illness, right? The end of aging and suffering under the illusion of death. Time, money, and resources. These are the three things that everyone values the most in the world. If you haven't been to sales training, this is one of the key lessons they teach you. Everyone, and that means everyone, values their time, money, and resources. And they value this above all else, right? That's why if you want to make a sale, you indicate how the product will save the prospect time, money, and resources. And if you do a good enough job of demonstrating this, you'll sell your product. This is also a very important means by which to understand how very important it is to the darkness to keep people separated from each other. They literally spend all of their time, money, and resources doing it. And so therefore, we must understand that if they're willing to spend it all to keep us separate from each other, then our sole purpose has to be to reconnect with each other, because that must be where our true power is. And whatever our true power winds up being, right, because we don't have any idea what it is, we have to assume that it's worth all the money and all the time and all the energy in the world to keep it suppressed. So in the past, right, the mass truncation of the human attention span has been used to also shorten our memory spans, right? We are so hyper-focused on what's on our screens, right, that we lose track of time. Our attention spans have been shortened, and so has, in doing so, our overall concept of history has been shortened as well, right? So now, right, in 2023, 2 weeks ago is considered history. Never mind what happened 2 years ago. And so what we've been going through, I think, over the past 3 years has sort of signaled the end of the collectively stunted human attention span, right? We now remember the lies from 3 years ago that are coming up for expiration today. And this is why 2023 is going to be the year of the boomerang. So if you haven't noticed, we're actually being led through a highly scripted process, right? Where comparison and contrast are being used to demonstrate the injustice and inconsistency so prevalent for so long in our society. In 2020, we were shown that when ordinary people who remain silent, right, or politely decline to receive the government suggestions, these people were attacked for their politeness. For a while, it was actually socially acceptable to attack people because of their refusal to take the government's suggestions. Now, in 2023, we've come to understand that those who didn't take the suggestions were prudent, right? We've also seen that the people who claim the loudest to have moral authority over others never even really understood what true moral authority is, right? Because morality is quiet, right? And it minds its own business. In 2020, we were coerced into thinking that human sexuality is the preeminent issue in our culture, and that it sort of needs to be discussed everywhere all the time, right? And sexuality in general is just not supposed to be that big of a deal. It's not supposed to be the defining attribute of our personality. It's not even really supposed to be something that we bring up unless we're trying to have sex with someone else. Talking about sex at all is just sort of unnecessary in general. Like, why do I need to know who you like to have sex with? How is that important to anything other than having sex? And last time I checked, we weren't talking about having sex. We were talking about something else. So it was sort of shoved down our throats. Anyway, we now know that the proliferation of sexuality is about normalizing devious sexuality worldwide. In 2020, toxic femininity and female supremacy were on the rise. Women were being convinced, that to be hypersexual and arrogant and sort of cruel to men, were a form of empowerment, right? And that claiming their inherent superiority over men was a form of enlightenment. So we now know that this was actually a tactic that was employed to have women demean themselves on purpose, right? To strip them of their true power and to alienate them from the source of their true power, which is a divine union with a man. In 2020, we thought that Hollywood was just sort of filled with eccentric artists, right? And we asked ourselves dumb questions like, does art imitate life? Or does life imitate art, right? The truth? Art in 2023 is used to keep people captured, right? Or captivated, right? It's used to numb people out while simultaneously sort of satisfying the karmic parameters of the wicked spiritual practices, right? While they're circumnavigating free will. So they're letting us know of their ill intentions through the use of predictive programming. And they do this in films and television. And as an example, I'll put it this way. My mom finally woke up when she realized that season 1 of The X-Files is actually happening in reality today, right? So yeah, we know about Hollywood and we know how sick people in Hollywood are. So that's just a few of the examples of sort of what's going to be coming back around in 2023. I also think that Hunter might become the hunted. I think Fix 2020 or Bust might come back up. I think we might get some more insights into life on other planets, weather modification and stuff like that. But we'll have to wait and see. I definitely recommend keeping a good supply of popcorn on hand. Yeah, so that's all I've got for now. I just want to give y'all a few heads up about what's going on with the channel. I have been posting some practicals like meditations, and I'll be posting solfeggios and just stuff that's sort of vetted through me and that works for me and that has been effective in my personal growth and spiritual practice. Yeah, and I also wanted to let you know that I finished writing a book, and I will be promoting it gently on the channel, and I'll be letting you know how you might be able to pick up a copy if you're interested. So, yeah, that's it. Happy Easter. Today's Easter. This is what people who have decided not to take government suggestions do on family holidays now. We make videos for our YouTube families instead. Anyway, that's all I've got for now. Thanks for sticking around, and we will see you next time.